You're halfway through your marathon training block on an easy run, feeling good, keeping things relaxed, or so you think. You glance at your watch and boom, your heart rate is way higher than it should be. So you slow down, maybe even walk, but it still won't settle. Why does this keep happening? And more importantly, how do you fix it? For those of you that are new here, I'm Russ, a 2:43, but hopefully soon to be a 2:39 marathon runner. And until a few years ago, I'd never even done an easy run in my life. In this video, I'm breaking down why easy running is crucial, how slow is easy running, why does heart rate change from week to week, how much zone 2 training should we be doing and where to fit it in, and how to improve our heart rate efficiency. So firstly, why running easy is crucial. And let's get something straight. Easy running is the foundation of all great endurance training. So if you want to race faster, I guarantee that you'll need to slow down in your easy training runs. Why? Well, because zone 2 training builds your aerobic base. And that's the main building block for building endurance. So to give you some brief science behind it, it's basically that it increases the number of mitochondria in your cells. And those are your energy factories, and they help you run longer with less effort, essentially giving you more energy, leading to better endurance. It also improves your ability to burn fat as fuel, saving your limited carbohydrate stores for when you really need them later on in the race. Being less reliant on those carbs and optimizing your primary energy resource of fat will actually lead to a better long distance performance. And a really good way to think of that, and how I like to think, is that imagine you've got a hybrid electric car. The more that you can get out of your electric battery, in this case fat, and the less you have to use on your petrol engine, so in this case carbs, the more efficient you'll run. And then also it keeps your lactic levels low. So you can sustain effort without your legs feeling like they're turned into cement. And we've all had that feeling of when our legs start to give up. But by keeping your lactate levels low as possible, for as long as possible, the longer you'll be able to get out your legs. And yet, despite these benefits, most runners either run their easy runs too hard or struggle to keep their heart rate low enough to lead to these adaptations. So let's figure out how to actually get this right, shall we? So how slow is easy? One of the biggest mistakes I see runners make is thinking that they're running easy when in reality, they're just going that little bit too hard. A true easy run should feel almost effortless and sit well within your zone 2. So how can you tell if you're running easily enough? A real good place to start is with an online calculator, and there's some really powerful and useful tools out there. A popular one I'll put in the link below, but essentially you can figure your zone 2 very roughly by figuring 220 minus your age and then calculating the zone between 60 and 70% of that figure. You can get even more targeted information if you're able to input your maximum heart rate and your resting heart rate as well. And for those of you that have a smartwatch and you've trained for a while, it may have given you your lactate threshold by now. Typically zone 2 would be just below your LT1, your lactate threshold 1. So some smartwatches are even cleverer, and they'll be able to figure out everything for you and be able to tell you training zones after just a few weeks of calibration. Now, the absolute most basic rule of thumb, and always your fallback option, would be to run on feel. And that's instead of using the data that you've got available to you. This day and age, it's not expensive to pick up a smartwatch, and that will do all the hard work for you. But essentially, you should be able to hold a conversation without gasping for air or even sing along to one of your favourite Taylor Swift songs. If you can't hit the high notes, you're definitely running too fast. And yeah, for a lot of runners, this means running slower than they'd like, sometimes even including walking breaks, especially on hills. But trust me, it's worth it. Also, a quick note, wrist-based heart rate monitors are not reliable. Where I am in Sydney, it's normally pretty sweaty, which causes havoc with a heart rate monitor on your watch. If you want to get really accurate data, go for a chest strap, or some of the watches like the Coros, they have an armband strap as well. And if you're serious enough to be watching this video, you're likely getting serious enough about your running that it's a worthwhile investment. So why does heart rate change from week to week? Have you ever noticed how some days your heart rate is way higher than usual, even though your pace feels about the same? Well, that's because your heart rate is affected by a lot more than just your speed. Here are a few other things that can send it soaring. So firstly, fatigue and recovery. If you're not fully recovered from your last workout, your heart rate will be higher. So take, for example, my Wednesday. They're easy runs, but they're always at a higher heart rate versus effort due to the recovering from what is often my hardest session of the week on the Tuesday, the day before. And that's an interval session. Then you've got dehydration. So even a small drop in fluid levels can actually make your heart rate have to work harder. And also make sure that you're topping up on key electrolytes like magnesium, sodium, and potassium. Heat and humidity play a factor. So running in warm conditions makes your body work harder to cool down, as opposed to somewhere where it's much cooler. So that means that your body has to work harder to keep it cool, and that will naturally increase your heart rate. Also, then you've got things like elevation and altitude. So running at high elevations or hilly terrain, that will demand more from your cardiovascular system, pushing your heart rate up. And that's because there's either less oxygen in the air at altitude, or running up a hill means you're pushing against gravity. And then lastly, sleep. And this links back to your recovery and something that I'm really passionate about. If you haven't got a good night's sleep, you will in all likelihood not recovered. I personally need about 8 hours sleep a night. When I'm hitting peak weeks of 120 kilometers or so in my marathon training block, I could easily sleep 9. So one more thing is that have you ever noticed that your heart rate creeping up over the course of a long run, even though you haven't sped up? That's called cardiovascular drift, and it's totally normal. The longer the time that you're running for, the more your body is having to work harder to keep it cool and continue with all its other functions like digestion. So naturally, it will start to have to work slightly harder as time goes on to do exactly the same functions, which means that your heart rate will be slightly higher towards the end of a run compared to the start of the run for the same pace. So how much zone 2 training should you be doing? Before we jump in, can I ask that if you're working towards your marathon and find this video useful, hit the like button and subscribe. Please also let me know in the comments how long it took you to get good at easy running. Like I said, I've only been doing it for a couple of years and I feel like I'm finally mastering it. So back to the question, how much training should you actually be doing in zone 2? So here's some general guidelines. Beginners and off-season runners, 90 to 100% of your training should be in that zone 2. If you're an absolute beginner, all you want to be doing at this stage is jogging. And I find that's a really good, useful term for zone 2 running. So if you're an off-season runner, it might be a little bit more like 90% because it's always useful to keep some speed work up as well. So experienced runners will likely spend between 80 to 90% in zone 2, with 10 to 20% in those higher intensity zones like zone 4 and zone 5 for their intervals, thresholds, tempo workouts. In my own marathon training blocks, I actually run 6 days a week and I'll get up to about 120 kilometers in peak weeks. And most of those runs and those kilometers that I run are in about that zone 2 level, about 80% of it. And that's because when you get the easy runs right, the hard sessions actually feel better and they have more of an impact. So here's how I actually structure my training week. So the good news is that it always starts with a rest day. Now you can call it a rest day, but it starts after the Sunday, which is the long run. And then on a Tuesday, I'll have a hard run. And I won't go into too much detail, but put it this way, it's a pretty tough session. Then on a Wednesday, I'll do an easy run. Thursday, another hard run. Friday, easy. Saturday, easy. Sunday, easy. Mostly easy. So by keeping my easy runs truly easy, I'm actually able to hit my quality sessions harder and avoid overtraining. And over time, that's how you build speed that actually lasts. So how do we improve our heart rate efficiency? Well, the good news is that if you're struggling with high heart rate on your easy runs now, it won't last forever. Your aerobic system will improve with time and you can start to notice big gains in just a couple of short months. It's impossible to ever truly master it, but there are a few ways to speed up the process. Here's a good one. Optimizing what's called cadence, and that's how quickly you turn over your legs. So you want to aim for about 175 to 180 steps a minute, and that will make you stay light on your feet. It doesn't mean you should be running quicker, it just means that more steps, as often beginner runners aren't turning their legs over enough. You can actually get what's called a metronome on your smartwatch, and that will beep every time you should be striding if you're really struggling to do it. And by doing that, you'll actually help to refine your form, and your foot will be landing under your center of mass. And that reduces energy waste from not overstriding. So think if your foot landing too far in front of you, you're actually hitting the brakes instead of an accelerator. And that's not what you want. Building a bigger aerobic base. Consistency is key. Watch my previous video here on how doing more easy miles leads to a faster marathon. And that'll explain much more. So you can then also incorporate what's called strides. So short 20 to 30 second bursts at about 90% effort. So 4 or 5 of those during your easy runs, that will help improve your running mechanics. And yeah, it will pick your heart rate up a little bit, but just drop it back after. Bring you back into that easy zone 2 running. Be a slave to your heart rate, not to your pace. And lastly, getting in the gym or doing hill reps. You should really try to strengthen those key running muscles, and that will make you much more efficient. It's something that I really don't enjoy, but I see the benefits from it from every session that I do. So over time, as your aerobic base grows, you'll find that you can run faster at the same heart rate. And that's when the magic starts to happen. We always want to be working on optimizing that relationship between heart rate and pace. So to sum it all up, keep your easy runs in zone 2. Don't stress about running slow and trust the process. The more you commit to low heart rate training, the faster and more efficient you'll become. It may take time, but it's a worthy sacrifice, trust me. And if you want to go even deeper into how much easy training you should be doing in your marathon training builds, check out this video here, where I break down how much easy running you need to be doing to achieve your goal marathon times. Ta-ra!